Okay, welcome again to the State Line Adventist Church, our health ministries meeting this afternoon with Dr. Walt Cross. We are actually going to take some questions about cancer right now for the next few minutes, and then we'll get right into his session on cardiovascular issues. So if you have a question specifically about cancer, go ahead and think of that now. We will have, at the end of all of our sessions today, we will have some more question opportunities, so you can maybe think of some of those for later. But if you have questions specifically related to the cancer, let's do those now, and then we'll get into our cardiovascular session with our naturopathic doctor, Dr. Walt Cross. All right, so please raise your hand. We will bring a mic to you, and then you can wait for the mic and speak directly into that with your questions.
You talked about the melatonin, 180 milligrams. In the store you can buy 5, 3, 10. Where do you go to purchase 180 milligrams?
Just go online and look for melatonin, 60 milligram. And there's several companies out there you can get it from. You can get it from us, or you can order it online.
You take it for a long time?
The physicians are using they're using it through the term of the cancer, and you can use it long term. Any other questions on cancer? Yes, one here.
So my sister's undergoing cancer treatments. Can you hear me?
His mic's on.
Hello?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. My sister's undergoing cancer treatments right now, chemotherapy and radiation. I'm just wondering, since she is in that process, is there something additional, or do we just wait for her to be done with that and then do something additional after that?
The oncologist will tell you only do their protocol, and a lot of that's due to just not knowing. Kind of like if you're looking at an herb for breastfeeding, a mother who's breastfeeding, can she take a certain herb? Or if she's pregnant, can she take a certain herb? And a lot of times they will say, no, you can't take that, because there's not enough research done to say if it's safe or not. Not because it's harmful, it's just not the research, and you don't want to hurt that child. And I totally get that. And many times oncologists they don't know if the two will work together, and so they'll say, no, just use our stuff because we don't want it interacting. But it is not uncommon for folks to use both at the same time. And you keep hearing me say, pray about it. I'm serious. It's folks say, well, that's just you're trying to get out answering it. Well, I could give you some information based on science, but if you can tap in and ask God, I find that's important. And I have people who don't believe in God, and they're not going to tap into that. And so they're going to tell me, well, I don't believe in God. I don't want you praying. That doesn't mean I'm not still praying when I'm, and so I just share with them on, yes, there's some science here, and how, I'm impressed, but I think that's a big part of it is prayer, because that's where the healing comes from. And God knows the physiology. Yes, ma'am.
I have a friend who just finished, at the end of January, chemo for prostate cancer, and he's still having digestive issues, and so I gave him recommended Golden Seal and Slippery Elm. Can you recommend anything else for that?
For the digestive issues?
Yeah, because he did not have digestive issues beforehand, and it's just come during and since.
And what are his signs and symptoms?
He just can't. He just feels nauseous all the time. He can't. It's not that he's throwing up, but he just doesn't feel. He eats like 2 or 3 bites, and he feels like he can't eat anymore.
Did he do chemotherapy?
Yes.
Does he still do chemotherapy?
No, it ended, I think, the 20th of January, or the end of January sometime.
If a person's having some challenges, if they were still using the chemotherapy, you can use astragalus.
Okay.
And astragalus works quite well for side effects of chemotherapy.
Okay.
And it may even be beneficial at this time. But for the digestive issue, slippery elm is really good. The marshmallow root, peppermint, spearmint, aloe vera, carob powder.
Okay, thank you.
Those are all really good to help with that. You could also try using a soup that's a potato soup. Potatoes, carrots, celery, onions. Potatoes, carrots, celery, and onions. Make a soup out of it. Blend it up well. And he can do up to 1 quart each meal. And do it for 7 to 21 days. The phytochemicals that are in those 4 vegetables are extremely healing to the gastrointestinal system. And he may find that to be very beneficial. The aloe vera, he could do, say, 3 ounces 3 times a day. On the slippery elm, marshmallow root, peppermint, spearmint, you can put some psyllium husk, and make a formula with that, and take, say, 2 tablespoons 30 minutes before each meal. That's extremely healing to the gastrointestinal tract. Also look at stress. Is he having a lot of stress? Stress can cause challenges there. You can try ginger, see if ginger might help.
Okay.
Those are the things I'd start with.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Yes.
I currently have cancer, and so I am using a infrared sauna blanket. I'm wondering if that would also count for the fever treatments, if I can measure my temperature while I'm in there.
If the key is, will that get your oral temp up between 102 and 104? You'll just have to test
Yeah.
it.
It
And
feels
just,
pretty hot. So
pardon?
It feels pretty hot.
Yes, and so just check your oral temp and see if
Okay.
it gets it up to that.
Okay.
And then once you get it up to 102, maintain it for 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then you stop, go get a cold shower.
Yeah.
And Dr. Thomas at Loma Linda found you need to go get in bed, cover up good, and sleep for 2 hours.
Okay.
And he got the best results from that.
Okay. I'm rebounding before I do that. Is that a good idea?
It's
or
a great
not?
idea.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You also may try taking a really hot shower ahead of time, or even try taking a bath. Put cayenne pepper, but sometimes cayenne pepper can set on fire certain areas, and so Vaseline works real good. But that cayenne pepper can get that temperature up, that hot bath, and then may push you, because sometimes we would do that for fever treatments prior to a fever treatment to push that faster. Any other questions? Okay, let's talk about cardiovascular disease. Cardio, heart, vascular, the vascular system. The number 1 killer in America is heart disease. According to Cornell University and Cambridge University, probably the major issue there is the person's fuel that they're putting in their body. What we eat significantly affects the cardiovascular system. There's several areas we can talk in cardiovascular. The first one is cholesterol. My cholesterol back 25 years ago was 288. The guys at work said, Walt, look at your family, genetically predisposed. Look at your daddy, your granddaddy. Your daddy was having multiple he had multiple heart attacks in his 30s. And they said, Walt, you just got to go on a statin drug. And I didn't want to go on a statin drug. And so I went on a no added cholesterol diet. Kind of like if your blood pressure's high, you go on a no added salt diet. I went on a no added cholesterol diet. My cholesterol went to 104. All I did was quit eating cholesterol. So how do you know what food has cholesterol in it? If it's got a mama. If it has a mother, a mama. If it's got a mother, it has cholesterol in it. If some cannibal decided to eat you, you're going to give them high cholesterol because you have cholesterol in you. Not that you're an animal. But, so just kind of, I'm a visual person. So let's take my favorite sandwich. Anybody want to guess what my favorite sandwich is? Tomato and lettuce sandwich, tomato sandwich. So let's look at the bread. Does the bread have a mama? But we'll come back to bread. Does the mayonnaise have a mama? Depends on which one. Some mayonnaises have eggs. Do eggs have a mama? Okay. Does a tomato have a mama? Does the lettuce have a mama? Does the cheese have a mama? Possibly. That's Miss Elsie. Does the bacon have a mama? That's Miss Piggy. Does the pickle have a mama? The pickle. The pickle don't have a mama, so it doesn't have cholesterol. So that's how you tell if food has cholesterol, if it came from a mama. But there are a couple other things that can affect your cholesterol level. One is wheat. Dr. Irvin Davis, no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Dr. William Davis. Dr. William Davis, a cardiologist, he found that the American wheat, which has 42 chromosomes, raises the LDL, has a propensity to raise the LDL. Wheat normally is at 14 chromosomes. The American wheat has been super hybridized, and the American wheat, he found as a cardiologist, can raise LDL. Cashews. Cashews can lower HDL. So it's not just eating one or two cashews. One of the problems when people go to a plant-based diet, they kind of go overboard. They don't use moderation. See, it's moderation in the good stuff and total abstinence in the bad stuff. Well, cashews are okay in moderation. But the cashews, where people are making cashew butter, cashew milk, cashew gravy, cashew loaf, cashew, you know what I'm talking about. When you drop dairy, you want it to taste good and rich, and so you're used to making a lot of your meals with dairy, and so now you want that richness still. And so some cook taught you how to add cashews to it, and so now you're using a mess of cashews. Literally, I was buying 25 pounds of cashews for Mary Lou at a time. I don't remember how often it was, but it was often enough. It was a lot. And then I found this research. Actually, we found it where I worked. We were having a problem. Our patients, they would go through an 18-day program, and their HDLs would significantly drop as we would benchmark with other lifestyle centers. So why were our HDLs dropping more than the other lifestyle centers? Well, we were using more cashews than they were. We dropped the cashews and went to almonds, and actually the HDL did better than the other lifestyle centers because they were using some. About 6 months later, our HDLs started dropping again. So I went to the dietary department and I said, "Are you using cashews again?" "How'd you know?" You know, like a kid with her hand in a cookie jar. "How'd you know?" I said, "Well, the labs told me." Labs, I'm watching them drop over the last several sessions, and we're going back to where we used to be. Well, there's all the excuses. Oh, you just taste better and whatever. No, we can't use it in moderation. Therefore, we ain't using it no more. If you use cashews in moderation, you're fine. But if you have a problem with them, don't use them, because they lower HDL. HDL is like the cop. He goes and gets the bad guys, the LDL, and takes it to jail. And you need a good, strong HDL. You'd like an HDL, you'd like a 50, 60 HDL. I can remember when it was over 30, the doctor would say, oh, that's way too high. Well, now we know that's not true. They're now wanting their patients to have it up in that 40, that 50, that 60. HDL is important. So if you're looking at cholesterol, the best thing to do is just quit eating cholesterol. That works the best. But I have people, just as I have people, I say, how much water do you drink? I don't do water. They don't drink water at all. Oh, there's water in my coffee. There's water in my sweet tea. Sweet tea. Sweet tea. That doesn't count. It's got caffeine in it. It's a diuretic. And you need just plum water, just plain water. And, well, the problem is when we're trying to help people make these changes, they're not willing to make the changes. And so what do you do for that person who just won't quit eating the cholesterol? You try to negotiate. You're after compliance. True? Yes. So sometimes a little's better than none. And so with water, I'll say, this is an 8-ounce. Go with 1 16-ounce bottle a day. Let's just start somewhere. And then hopefully they'll start liking it. And then when you have foods, don't tell them to take everything off the plate. Just tell them how good this is, and try putting that on the plate. And then try putting this on the plate. And finally, the other stuff, bad stuff, ain't got no room no more. And you're just eating good stuff. You got to try to work with people where they are. There's something called bergamot. Who's heard of bergamot? It's now has a product that's very good. It's called Cholesterol Pro. You do 2 capsules twice a day for the first month, and you go to a capsule once a day. And it has bergamot, and bergamot works quite well. There's something called red yeast rice, and red yeast rice is a natural statin. And the problem is when you take a statin drug, here's how it works. Let's look at some physiology. I learned this from a NASA astronaut who was actually a medical doctor. So you got a tree, and if you hew around the tree, what happens? The tree dies. So that's what cholesterol does, according to this astronaut. It hews around the tree, and that tree dies. Well, one of them branches on the tree is the production of cholesterol. The doctor knows that probably you're not going to change your tongue, and you're going to keep eating cholesterol. So he needs to reduce the cholesterol. Well, see, the body's kind of like a kitchen sink. Your kitchen sink has 2 holes, one where the water comes out and one where the water drains. And the engineer designed it where you could turn both of them plumb on and it will not overflow unless it's occluded. But then your husband comes in, he starts pouring in 5-gallon buckets of water along with those 2 spigots on. It's going to overflow after a while. It was not designed to take that much water. Our body is not designed to take that much cholesterol. Our body makes cholesterol. If you didn't have cholesterol, you would die. It's important for hormones and just various things in the body. You have to have cholesterol, but in the right level. So the doctor knows that you're not going to quit eating cholesterol. So you're pouring in all this cholesterol. So what's he do? He cuts off the water spigots, your body's production of cholesterol, by giving you the statin drug. One of them branches of the body's production of cholesterol. So now you don't produce as much cholesterol. The problem with that is that tree, according to this astronaut medical doctor, it has a branch on it that makes something called coenzyme Q10. CoQ10 is very important for cell wall stability. It's important for oxygenation, a number of things. So even if you take a statin, a natural statin like red yeast rice, it is a statin. You've got to take CoQ10 because it cuts off or significantly lowers your body's production of coenzyme Q10. So that's why I quit using recommending the red yeast rice and moved over to the bergamot. Also, there's a product out there by Listerol, which is allicin, a very strong component allicin, and we get very good results with Listerol, the allicin. Allicin lowers the cholesterol. But the doctor said there's another branch on this tree, and that's how NASA got involved. See, there's this branch on this tree that makes a chemical that helps with short-term memory. The astronauts were having short-term memory loss. And this physician said that had to stop with astronauts. So they totally relooked at the utilization of statin drugs because astronauts were having short-term memory loss because they had high cholesterol and they were taking a statin drug, and the statin drug was reducing that chemical that helped with short-term memory. So there's some natural things that you can do. I don't recommend them first because I want that person to quit eating the cholesterol. That's the better thing to do. Quit using the sandpaper. So that's what works for cholesterol. Triglycerides. Triglycerides can be stress. They can be sugar, eating a lot of sugar. It can be eating meat. It can be eating oil, or as y'all say, oil. I had a young girl, 14 years of age. She was Colombian. She comes in with her parents. We do labs at the beginning. We do labs at the end. Her triglycerides were significantly out the roof at 14 years old. So I got the labs. I'm sitting there with the mom and the little girl. Actually, mom was here. The little girl was there. And I said, okay, does she have a lot of stress? She has no stress. She's homeschooled, no stress at all. So the mama thinks. I said, does she eat sugar? No, I don't allow it in the house. No sugar. Okay. Well, I knew they were total vegetarians. I said, she don't eat meat, does she? No, we're total vegetarians. Well, I thought so. Does she do oil? And the mama goes, that's it. Do you know how there's some husbands that will, I don't care what you fix, they'll pour salt on it? You know what I'm talking about? They'll pour salt on it. Well, what she did is every time her mama fixed something, she had a bottle of, like when I was a kid on the table. Did y'all have vinegar on the table when you were kids? We did in the South. We pour vinegar on it, especially on grains and spinach and stuff like that, but especially greens. Well, she would pour oil just on everything. Olive oil. That's healthy. In moderation. So I said, okay, let's do something. For the next 5 weeks, no oil. None. Okay? We drew her labs 5 weeks later, and her triglycerides were normal. She was just doing too much oil. I'd read that oil would be an issue, and definitely I saw the issue right there with this little 14-year-old girl. So triglycerides, it is true that bergamot will also help lower triglycerides. It is true that allicin will lower triglycerides. Atherosclerosis. One of y'all asked me that just a few minutes ago. Atherosclerosis. Clogged arteries. Clogged arteries. Dr. Esselstyn, who's heard of Esselstyn at Cleveland Clinic, Esselstyn said, if you will give him, if the situation is safe enough to wait 1.5 years to 1 3/4 years, you can pretty well 100% reverse atherosclerosis. But there are some acute situations you don't have 1.5 years. You need to do something right now. You're going to die if the blockage is so bad. And so there are times that you have to be aggressive because you've just waited so long. But there is something I have found that will reverse atherosclerosis fairly fast. Usually within 3 months, we see significant benefit. Even 2 months, significant benefit. I call it Drano. I had a lady come in this last summer. Husband had a 75% occlusion in his heart. In 2 months, he was at 5%. At 3 months, they went back and tested and checked, and he was at 0 occlusion. I had a lady come in from New York City. She had both carotids at 75% occlusion, and in 3 months, she was at 25% occlusion. Now, why was the guy with the 70% occlusion, why did he reverse in 3 months, and the lady with the carotids at 3 months, she was only at 25%? Because I hadn't learned everything yet. Remember, you got to learn physiology. And I'd started learning that you can use lecithin granules, 2 tablespoons a day, And that's all we were doing with this lady. And it took 3 months, and she was at 25%. I later learned that you could go to 3 times a day. Then I later learned that you could add to that 3 tablespoons a day of lecithin granules, 1 tablespoon twice a day of flax oil. Flax oil. And what happens is flax oil lowers the melting rate of the plaque to where it dissolves faster, along with the lecithin granules together. And that's why we saw that fella at 5% at 2 months and totally gone at 3 months. Okay, so the lecithin granules can either be soy lecithin or sunflower lecithin. People like granules better than the powder. You can put it over your salad. You can put it over your whatever you want to do. When my dad was staying with my sister, my niece would go in and just eat it out of the... I had to keep sending him soy lecithin because she'd just eat it. She thought it tasted good. But soy lecithin is also good for the brain. 33% of your brain should be lecithin, so it helps with brain function also. So that works really good for atherosclerosis. But we talked at dinner time. You got to get to the cause. Don't just reverse it. I mean, yeah, I'm rubbing my arm with sandpaper and you're putting something on it that's really powerful. But if I keep doing it, it's going to break down again. So what causes the atherosclerosis? Yes, it can be diet. But it can be anything that raises the C-reactive protein, the CRP. Sleep deprivation raises CRP. So a very good friend of mine had a massive heart attack, MI, died in the garden. CPR was done. The occlusion was so bad, it did not work. The autopsy said it was a massive heart attack, MI, and that he had an occlusion from the plaque. But this guy had a perfect lifestyle. He ate whole food, plant-based diet with variety. He drank plenty of water. He exercised. He worked like a mule. Everything perfect. Trusting God. All of it perfect, except one. And I found it at Harvard as I was researching, trying to figure out why did my friend die. Sleep deprivation increases CRP. This man was a workaholic. He went all over the world doing what I do. At his funeral, I said, how do you say no in order to say yes longer? He couldn't say no. See, if I wanted my friend to come and do a lecture, I didn't call Vicky his wife. Because Vicky'd say no. Do not call my wife and ask me to come. She will say no out of the normal schedule. Because she's trying to take care of me. Just like Vicky was trying to do. If you call me and I can slip it by Walter, there's a good chance I'll come. Because there's such a need. And Bob had that passion that I have. And Bob was teaching agriculture. He was teaching health. He was teaching true education, teaching the gospel. And he would be up all night. You know, he might be today out helping his neighbor cut firewood or work in his garden, but tonight at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, he had lights out working in his garden. Or at 1, 3 o'clock in the morning, he's typing emails to all over the world on dealing with spiritual issues, trying to help people. He had the same problem that Elder White had. And he didn't get his sleep. Sleep deprivation raises C-reactive protein. C-reactive protein scars the vascular walls, inflames the vascular walls into where you start having plaque buildup, and then you can have a occlusion, like he did. And so there's a number of things that you can do that causes inflammation. And so you got to address that issue of inflammation. Congestive heart failure. So CHF, there's several problems that you want to address. You want to look at that diet. According to, I mentioned last night that Dr. He just died last year, John McDougall. McDougall said that Kempner's diet was the best reversal of cardiovascular disease in the world. And that's that plate that I shared up last night that had the Kempner, the picture, and for breakfast is 1 cup of brown rice and 3 fruits, 3 servings of fruit. A serving is each apple, orange, pear, half a cup of little things like raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, not just one blueberry. Those were good blueberries at dinner today. I had me a couple. Huge. I've never had a blueberry that big. And so breakfast is those 3 fruits and a cup of brown rice. Now, when I go to Africa, we just finished our 14th program in Africa, where we go and we do a 2-week program. It's from 8 in the morning, as we mentioned last night, 8 in the morning till 5 at night, except on Sabbath. It's just during Sabbath school and church. And sometimes when in Rome, you do as Rome. You got to negotiate with people, y'all, or they'll just plumb jump off the wagon. The Africans did not like the idea of 3 fruit. They wanted 6 fruit. I said, okay, what if we do 6 half-fruit servings? Okay, we can do that. It was still 3 servings, but it was 6 half servings. And so it was beautiful, just like as you saw that plate last night that had the vegetables around it. It had the brown rice in the middle, in which in the brown rice we added, Kempner didn't, but we added, again, you got to negotiate. We added some scallions, some turmeric, and some scallions, turmeric, and cilantro. And it makes it kind of that pretty color we saw last night. And then they put those 6 servings of fruit around it. Tree tomatoes. Ooh, they are good. Who's had tree tomatoes? Amazing, aren't they? They had these little bananas that about this big. Whoa, are they packed? Just some tremendous fruit that they have there. For the noon meal, which I call dinner. I'm a country boy. For dinner is in Africa. Again, they do things different. I cannot get the Africans to eat salad. They won't mix it. And so you don't have to worry about salad dressing. So what they did, as you saw last night, you had the brown rice and then you had raw vegetables around the plate. It's pretty, and it was good. For us that do salad, you can have, like we did for dinner today, you can have a nice big old salad. But Kempner would not allow his patients at Duke, and if you went to Duke, it's only $13,000 for your first visit, $6,500 for your each quarter, private pay, no insurance. For the noon meal was a nice big old salad, but no dressing, no oil, no cheese, no meat, no salt. You could put lemon juice. But sometimes guys got a problem with that. I can get ladies to do the lemon juice better than the guys. For the guys, I got to negotiate. And I'll say, what about, you like salsa? Just put some salsa on there. Low sodium salsa. No added salsa on there. And that tastes really good. You got to negotiate. That's the noon meal. If the person does supper, I find not doing supper does better. But if you do supper, then you just repeat breakfast. But better yet, if you got to do something, just drink a V8 juice. Or a vegetable juice that you make. Or better yet, just don't do it. Because a lot of folks with cardiovascular issues also have issues with weight. When you don't eat breakfast within 2 hours of awaking, you increase your risk of a heart attack and a stroke by 150% based on the platelets. Read that in Neil Nedley's book, Proof Positive. And then in that same book that Neil Nedley wrote, he talks about Dr. Koop. And Koop found that when you eat breakfast, it increases metabolism, you burn calories. When you eat dinner, it increases metabolism, you burn calories. And around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, your metabolism starts shutting off. And so when you eat supper, you don't burn those calories, and you're more prone to keep that weight. But it's not just weight is an issue in the metabolism. They've now found that the mitochondria changes when you eat after 2:30 in the afternoon. A good friend of mine called me one day. He's internal medicine. He called me and he said, "Well, don't you get excited when you learn new stuff in your field?" I do. I like learning stuff. And he said, "Well, I just went to a seminar and this is what we found. We found that when you eat after 2:30 in the afternoon, it affects the mitochondria. They can even see it under the microscope, the difference. And that it's not just the DNA that transfer the cancer, it's also the mitochondria that's transferring the cancer. And we know that now. And he says if you eat after 2:30, your mitochondria is more prone to transfer the cancer. But if you stop eating by 2:30, the mitochondria doesn't transfer the cancer as much. So something's going on when we eat after 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So Kempner did that for a diet for reversing cardiovascular disease. Then he had folks drinking water. Water's important. How much water do you need? University of California at Davis found it takes a half a gallon to run a 5-year-old. And we're bigger when we're 5 years old. Up to 128 pounds. That's to sit on the couch, though. And so if you're 128 pounds or less, and you're active, you do sports, you walk, you work in a garden, you sweat, whatever, you need more than the 64 ounces. If you're over 128 pounds, it's body weight divided by 2, that many ounces. I did a study when I went back to school and one of my courses, and we were doing lab work. And one of the things we were monitoring was hydration. And the professor had us all, we were testing our labs, personal labs, 4 times a day, every day, 7 days a week, testing those labs. 100% of the class was dehydrated the first week. There was like 30-something, 35, 36 of us. Maybe 38, somewhere in there. Maybe a little more. 100% of us were dehydrated. The second week, the professor said, I want you to take your body weight divided by 2 and do that many ounces of water, plus if you're active. So you weigh 200 pounds, that's 100 ounces. 200 divided by 2, 100 ounces. And if you're more active, drink a little more. Another pint, a quart of water. 75% of the class was dehydrated. Third week, the professor said, I want you to take the same volume of water, but let's learn from this guy who was a friend of Einstein's. He was another physicist, another PhD in physics, another genius guy. He found that when you drink more than 2 to 3 ounces of water at a given time, it goes into something called free flow. So if I take this 8 ounces of water and I guzzle the whole 8 ounces of water, I'm only going to absorb 2 to 3 ounces, and 5 to 6 will just go out and urinate out. And so it's kind of like, who's ever grown a tomato plant? If you pour a 5-gallon bucket of water on that tomato plant, what's going to happen? It's going to run off. Versus a drip line, it's going to absorb in. The third week in class, the professor had us take that much, 3 to 4 times based on body size, every half hour that we were awake. But this is interesting. He said, don't do it 15 minutes before you eat, while you eat, to an hour after you eat. We ever heard that before? Smart guy. The class was 100% hydrated 4 times a day for 7 days a week by doing that. Isn't that something? So hydration is very, very important. And Kempner at Duke knew that drinking adequate water was very important. He didn't know about free flow, but he had his patients drinking adequate water for cardiac function, for vascular flow. When you're dehydrated, the blood is thicker and stickier. There's many things, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. He then had, Kempner believed in exercise, and Kempner looked at little humans and big humans. And he found little humans exercised 4 times a day. They had recess in the morning, recess after dinner, recess in the afternoon, went home, played, and had chores. So Kempner then took that theory at Duke University and applied it to the big humans, the adults, and had them exercise 4 times a day. Significantly benefited and reversing of cardiovascular disease and other issues that we'll talk about next. The next thing is he had folks go to bed at night around 9 o'clock. Is 9 o'clock important? Well, do you remember when we were in school and we studied, we had charts on the wall in A&P, anatomy and physiology, and you had a chart on the nerves and a chart on the muscles and the chart on the vascular system and the chart on the lymphatic system. And the chart on the lymphatic system was white at the brain because there was no lymphatic system in the brain. Well, guess what? Around 2013, they found there is a lymphatic system in the brain. It's called the glymphatic system. Lymphatic, put a G on the front, glymphatic system. At first, Harvard said somewhere around 9 to 10 o'clock at night, the brain does a deep clean. From 10 to midnight, it does a thorough clean and flushing. But you got to be asleep. You ain't flushing the toilet if you ain't asleep. About 2 years later, Harvard came out and said, though we thought the only way to get the lymphatic system going was through getting those hours of sleep before midnight, we have found there's another way of increasing the lymphatic system. Guess what it is? The same thing that increases our normal lymphatic system. Exercise, motion. But, with a capital B, U-T, in red, but. So, they found that exercise increases the lymphatic system. Going to sleep at 9 o'clock significantly increases the lymphatic system, but to get the full effect, you've got to do both. You can't just say, oh, well, I'll go to bed back when I used to, 10, 11, 12, 1. I'll just exercise. No, it doesn't do the same. To get the full benefit, you've got to be asleep by 9 o'clock, and you've got to do your exercise to get the full effect of cleaning the brain. Kempner, back when he put together the program at Duke, had people going to bed like at 9 o'clock at night. I've added a fifth item, and that's trusting God. I believe that's important. In congestive heart failure, a lot of times folks will have edema, and they'll have pulmonary edema. They'll have edema in the lower extremities. The best thing I found for that is dandelion leaves, 4 times to 6 times a day. Dandelion leaves. Dandelion root doesn't work as well. I learned that from Dr. Phil Collins. I was using root, and he said, Walt, go to leaf. It'll work better. And it did. It works much better. Hawthornberry. Hawthornberry is like mullein to the lungs, to the heart. Hawthornberry is amazing for the heart. But hawthornberry only has a half-life of 4 hours. So you want to use it 4 times a day. CoQ10, coenzyme Q10 is very important for heart function if you have CHF. Magnesium, also you need for CHF. You want to go to bowel tolerance. Till you have a loose stool, then back up. Usually you're looking for 1,500, at least 1,200 to 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams a day if they have bowel tolerance of magnesium. It's very important for cardiac function. Potassium is also very important for cardiac performance. And so those are some things that we do for congestive heart failure. Hypertension. Hypertension is huge. The number one cause of hypertension is stress. The number one cause of hypertension is stress. Stress raises cortisol, adrenaline, lowers potassium, and you have hypertension. So you've got to address the stress issue. Number 2 is dehydration. Dehydration affects hypertension. Again, when you're dehydrated, the blood is thicker and it's stickier. The pump has to pump harder. That's just hydraulics. When you're dehydrated, the brain doesn't have as much water to the brain, and therefore you're more prone to stress. When you're dehydrated, the kidneys don't get adequate water, and kidneys are the switches that run the blood pressure. You got to have adequate water for the kidneys to work right in order for those switches to work right. It's through urination. If you're dehydrated, the hypothalamus says I'm in a drought, and so it says hold back on fluids. You can have fluid retention with dehydration. And then it's through urination that you get rid of sodium. Well, sodium affects your conductivity, the electricity in the body. Dehydration affects conductivity. If you're dehydrated, it affects conductivity in the body, the electricity. And high conductivity raises blood pressure. Ideal body weight. And there's a lot of research you can read on ideal body weight and hypertension. The next one is sleep deprivation. This is a new one that's kind of hit the market. The American Heart Association published it as the 8th cause of cardiovascular disease in June of 22. More than 2 days a week of less than 7 hours of sleep significantly increases your risk of hypertension, stroke, and heart attack. Just 2 days a week, over 2 days a week of less than 7 hours of sleep significantly increases your risk of a heart attack, a stroke, and hypertension. Kidney function, renal failure. Yes, there's renal issues due to dehydration, but it could be just renal issues, and so you're in renal failure. Again, the switches on the kidneys are what keep the blood pressure right. What do you do for renal failure? The Duke diet is the best thing. I'll have people come in with renal failure, stage 4, getting ready to go on dialysis in 3 months. They have no renal failure at all. Why? God blessed. The treatments. I do the Duke diet. It's amazing on renal failure. That's the brown rice and fruit and brown rice and Skimpner's program that we talked about for the heart. But also I add to that corn silk, dandelion root, CoQ10 4 times a day, 100 milligrams, and activated charcoal. Now, activated charcoal is something that we're now starting to see published. A friend of mine who's a surgeon that had the best anti-rejection of kidney transplants taught me years ago to use activated charcoal for renal failure. And I was talking to him just the other day, and I said, Doc, remember you telling me about using charcoal for renal failure? Yep. I said, well, it's now being published. It's now protocol. He says, really? He said, just made sense to me. Well, what is the number one utilization of charcoal in the United States? Water purification. What do the kidneys do? Water purification. It takes the load off the kidneys is what they found. And they do 3 caps, well, what he used 3 caps twice a day or a teaspoon twice a day. Again, on charcoal, anytime you use charcoal, we'll talk about this tomorrow, but anytime you use activated charcoal, do not use it within 2 hours of a medication because it will soak it up. Let's say that a young gal is on birth control and she comes in and she gets some activated charcoal from me. It is my duty to inform her. She takes that within 2 hours of taking her birth control pill. It ain't working tonight. Or if you're on Lanoxin for tachycardia, it's not going to work. That's why you use it in the emergency room, or used to use it on ambulances for overdose. I had a nurse one time give a patient way too much morphine. And she called me. She said, I read the MAR wrong. What do I do? I said, activated charcoal. It was like she didn't, fortunately it was by mouth, it wasn't by IV, but it was like she didn't even give it to her, soaked it right up. But so if you use charcoal, don't use it within 2 hours either side of a pharmaceutical. Atherosclerosis, clogged arteries, that's just plumbing, y'all. You know, you've got a smaller lumen there. You've gone from a 2.5 inch pipe down to a 1 inch pipe. You're going to have to pump. The pump pressure is going to go up. That's why we use LDH, large diameter hose, on firefighting. 4-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch, because we don't have that line loss. Hardening of the arteries. If you have a bilge pump that's pumping water out of a creek or out of a pond, and it has a soft hose that kind of moves. Have you ever seen a pump do that? You've seen those pumps pumping out of creeks or ponds. As that pipe expands, that hose expands, that pressure is reduced because it gets bigger. But if you have a rigid pipe, it's not going to keep that pressure lower. And so if you go rigid, the pressure is really going to go up when the pressure of the pump goes up. That's hardening of the arteries and what happens there. If it's a heart issue, the best thing I have found for a heart issue, for hypertension, is hawthornberry. Hawthornberry works like 3 different types of hypertensive medication. And so I have a friend of mine, he's a physician in our local area. He doesn't do any of this stuff. He just read where hawthornberry worked very well, didn't have the side effects of blood pressure medicine. And if you went to him as he's just typical doc out there. And if you went to him and you had high blood pressure, he gave you hawthornberry instead of the others because it worked better and didn't have the side effects. It's amazing. So that's what we use for that. Any questions on heart disease? So hawthornberry has a half-life of 4 hours, so you've got to use it 4 times a day. Usually folks are using somewhere around 425 milligrams 4 times a day. 2 to 3 times a day. 2 to 3 times a day. 400 to 425 milligrams. Yes, ma'am. We got to have a mic. I'm sorry. I'm glad you said magnesium. It's something I forgot to share with y'all.
I understand that there are like 6 kinds of magnesium, so which one does what?
It depends on what you're wanting it for. Some magnesium works like a rifle, like Magtine or L-theanine. And no, I mean, not L-theanine. Magtine, it's got another name I'm not bringing up right now. Theanate, the L-theanate. I think that's what it is, but they call it Magtine. That's for the brain, and that's what your neurologist is going to use for you when you have dementia or short-term memory loss. That's like a rifle. But then you have some magnesiums are like a shotgun, like citrate or glycinate, and it's more broad spectrum and works for a lot of things, from nerves and for your bowels and brain function and just all kinds of stuff. And so there's just different, and see which one works best for you. Some people, they find some may give them more green apple two-step. Y'all know what green apple two-step is? Yes. Yeah, a bowel intolerance. And so you go to bowel tolerance and come back. But I had a guy come in. He had restless leg, and he couldn't even tolerate 400 milligrams without a loose stool. And I just really felt that it was a magnesium deficiency. So I called a physician up in Washington State. And he said, Walt, have you tried magnesium oil? No, what is it? I didn't even know what it was. So he sent me some magnesium oil. And he said, put it on there and see if that takes care of his restless leg. It did. Transdermally goes in. But also he used it for angina and cardiac issues. When Mary Lou was having the heart issue, when her ejection fraction was so low, she was putting magnesium oil on her heart several times a day, significantly helped with that transdermal absorption of the magnesium oil into the heart. There's a question right? Oh, yes.
If you have like your regular heartbeats, like PVCs, that kind of stuff, is there something that would help with that?
Yes. They were going to do an ablation on Mary Lou. You got to be careful. You don't want it to be near the SA node, or you can, if you knock out the SA node, then you're in a heap of trouble. And you'll be on a pacemaker, and if the batteries ever die, then you'll die. So you want to be careful with the ablation. And she did not. She was having problems near her SA node. And so they were concerned. And they wanted to put a pacemaker in for that. So she said, give me 2 weeks. Can I go and pray on it for 2 weeks? And the electrocardiologist said, okay, but you're throwing over 50% of your beats, or you're throwing PVCs. Over 50% of the time. We need to do something pretty fast. She said, okay. So we went home, and we hit the hawthorn hard, and the magnesium, and we prayed a lot, and went back, and this is at UAB, and went to the electrocardiologist, and he said, what'd you do? He says, you're not throwing any PVCs. There's nothing to ablate. He said, you can't do an ablation if there's nothing there. And so the diet, I believe, is important to support that heart, and the magnesium is huge for that in the hawthorn berry. There's other things, but there's also L-carnitine. You do like 1,000 milligrams L-carnitine a day. Yes.
Yes, I was diagnosed a few years ago with, I have lipoprotein little a, which is not a normal lipid that's run with your panel, but 1 in 5 people have that. And they did a calcium scoring exam, and I have very high, 178 was my score. And the Widowmaker is now 75% occluded. So immediately they put me on a statin. 6 months later, I developed rheumatoid arthritis. So there are things sometimes that you have that you can't, at least they're telling me there's nothing they can do to lower that through diet.
Yes.
Is that true?
And sometimes that can be true.
Yeah. So
because we just haven't figured it out yet. For the atherosclerosis that you're dealing with, the diet and the lecithin granules and the flax oil are effective, and I see it time after time after time consistently. I never have it not work. From the calcification, so you're having calcification.
Well, the calcium scoring exam, which is a CT.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So it's not calcification; it's just calcium scoring.
No, it is showing that Widowmaker is 75% occluded, and then 2 others are 30%. So they immediately put me on a statin.
Yes.
Of course, now my cholesterol is very low, and it was very hard to get it down, and that's the reason why.
Do you eat a plant-based diet?
Yes.
Then I would add the lecithin granules and the flax oil.
But I would caution people, if you ever have any doubt you can't reduce your cholesterol any other way, to ask your doctor to actually run that test. Because 1 in 5 people have it.
Yes.
And most people, if they don't find that out, are the type that drop dead of a massive heart attack.
Yes. So that's worth a try. If you do have calcification, like a valve calcification or vessel calcification, K2 will, according to research, will decalcify both the vessels and also the valves. You can decalcify a valve with using K2. Yes.
Can I?
Oh, okay.
How much was the magnesium amount?
Pardon?
The magnesium amount, what was the amount on
Everybody's different.
for the PVC?
Oh, I would try to go at least 1,200. If you can do 1,500, 2,000. But you want to go to bowel tolerance. You don't want to have a problem with loose stool. And so that's where you can use the magnesium oil and put that on there also. Mary Lou's found a significant difference in how she felt by using the magnesium oil. Yes?
For over 20 years, I've had AFib full-time. I do magnesium, potassium. I've tried hawthorn.
How did you use the hawthorn?
Just, well, I actually harvested it myself, some of it, and then I bought capsules.
How many times a day did you use it?
Twice.
Okay. Go to 4.
Okay.
And then also to help with that, I would also use iodine, 12.5 milligrams of iodine, and that's been found.
I do that as well.
Okay, you do 12.5.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I would try increasing the hawthorn to 4 times a day. Also, are you using CoQ10, 100 milligrams,
Yes.
4 times a day?
Yes.
Okay.
Not that much.
I do 4 times a day
Okay.
Of the CoQ10?
of the CoQ10.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure I had everything written down right for the stage 4 kidney disease. The diet you were talking about is the 3 fruits and the brown rice for the kidney disease?
That's the Kempner diet, yes. It's the 3
okay.
fruit and brown rice and the salad and the brown rice.
And then the activated charcoal, dandelion root, and CoQ10. Was there one other thing?
So it's the diet, it's the exercise, it's the if they'll let you do the water. A lot of times they're going to put you on fluid restriction of
Right.
1,200, even 1,000 cc's.
Right.
Go with what they tell you, but if they hadn't yet, do what you need to do until they put you on a restriction, because Dr. Ted Watkins found if he can do as much water as possible before they go to restriction, he has better results.
Right.
So that's the diet, the exercise 4 times a day, the water, and being asleep by 9 o'clock, and then the corn silk.
Oh, corn silk. That's what I did.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And then the dandelion root, the CoQ10, and the activated charcoal.
So we talked about high blood pressure. What about low blood pressure? Do you have any for that?
For low blood pressure, it's a more difficult one. And I'd look at, are you following all 9 laws of health? You know, I added being happy there. But the laws of health are important on every one of the items we've been talking about this afternoon. You can't just do these other things and not worry about those laws of health. They're very important. Hawthorn berry is good. It helps, with hypotension. But you can add. Have they had you add any salt in your water or in your?
Oh yeah, we're up 4,000 milligrams.
Yeah, I figured. Is it helping?
Sometimes it depends. I lose it a lot. So I have adrenal insufficiency and it just runs. But yeah, sometimes it does. It'll kind of help calm that down so that I'm not so weak. But if there's something else that could maybe strengthen that heart,
I would do the
sounds like
hawthorn
it.
berry. Hawthorn berry is just so good to strengthen the heart muscle.
Okay.
Hawthorn berry works not only in just the electrical, but it also works on the muscle.
That's kind of what I'm looking for. I can feel the weak. I can feel the weakness there. So.
Okay. And also I do the magnesium oil.
Okay. It won't lower the blood pressure.
Pardon?
It won't lower the blood pressure anymore.
Try it.
Okay.
Test it. Yeah. Because that magnesium oil will help the heart. And just test it and see.
So my mother has had years of heart problems and surgeries, and she ended up with bowel necrosis due to an ischemic that came after heart conditions. So she's got about 3 foot of bowel. And I know that the bowel is where your immune system is, it's where your absorption is. And so now we've got a problem with nutrition. And so all these things that we're writing down, how do you have any suggestions of how I can help her when she lacks bowel?
Was it in the large or the small intestine?
It's her small intestine.
That's
She
what I
has
was afraid of.
3 feet of bowel left, just very little absorption.
Yes. I asked a buddy of mine, a gastroenterologist, I said, Joe, how do you deal with that when you don't have the absorption mechanism? He said, that's the problem. That's the problem. It's just like the guy who didn't have the foot. They'd taken the foot off. Have you tried juicing? I would try juicing and just see how she does. How tall is she? 5'2". How much does she weigh? 80 pounds. Yeah. I would try juicing And, I mean, you could try being aggressive like cancer juicing, where you're doing the 8 ounces like IV, 8 ounces every waking hour for 12, 13 hours. And, but she can't drink the juice. I failed to mention that earlier. You don't want to drink the juice. If you drink the juice, you miss a third of your digestion. You have 3 major parts of digestion: the first part of the stomach, the second part of the stomach, and then what she doesn't have anymore. And you get enzymes from your stomach, from your saliva, first saliva, your stomach, and your pancreas. And so in that first part of the stomach, your usually digestion there is somewhere between 30 minutes and 60 minutes. They tell us the closer we are to Social Security, the closer we are to 60 minutes. So when you take food and put it into this first part of the stomach, unless you've loaded it with, impregnated it with amylase, protease, and lipase, especially amylase from the saliva, it's just going to sit there. The stomach, the saliva has to be the digestive enzyme that first works in that first part of the stomach. And so a good friend of mine, a physician, told me, he said, "Walt, I don't have my patients juice because you miss a third of digestion." I said, "I know." I said, "But what if your patients didn't drink the juice? They chewed the juice." Kind of like not swishing, chewing. Because just like a snake, when a snake goes and bites you, it goes down, that movement down, like you can milk a snake by doing this, that pushing down. When our mouth has this motion, we squirt more saliva into the mouth. And so that helps with that, producing more saliva. It mixes it like with, it's kind of like have you ever made a cake? And you put in the powder and you put in the liquid, is it ready to go in the oven? You got to mix it. Or guys, I mixed up some concrete the other day, and you got your wheelbarrow and you put in your sackcrete and you put it in your water, and is it ready to pour in the hole? You got to mix it with your hoe until the powder soaks up the liquid. Well, when you put food in the mouth, it doesn't matter if it's food with fiber or food without fiber. Juice is food without fiber. It's got to soak up those digestive enzymes to be able to then, in the first part of the stomach, digest it. Now, if you want it to work even better, use heirloom food. See, back around 1903, they started putting a chemical on food to get a longer shelf life because it was rotting, they thought. And so they used the byproducts of pharmaceuticals to put on there to keep it from rotting. And then they found they could hybridize it. They made hybrid seeds. And then when they hybridized it, it had a longer shelf life. Well, now what they found was the food was not rotting. It was digesting. See, what they did is they hybridized out significantly the amylase, the protease, and the lipase. So when God made our seeds, the heirloom seeds, He made them, that food, to have digestive enzymes in it. And so when you juice those foods or eat those foods from heirloom seeds, you have a lot of extra enzymes to help with breaking it down from the macronutrients to the micronutrients. So it's small enough that that chyme can soak in within the villi in those small little screens. But the other thing that's with the difference between the hybrid and the heirloom, University of North Carolina found that same soil, two different growing of one food that is heirloom, one food that is hybrid. The hybrid only uptakes about 40 to 40% of the nutrition out of that soil that the heirloom is able to pull out. So when you're growing a garden, it's going to make a huge difference. If you just use heirloom seeds, you're going to get more nutrition and you're going to get digestive enzymes. I would do the juice, have her chew it, do it 8 ounces every hour for 13 hours. See how that works. If you need extra protein, you could add some pea protein. Yes?
So when you were talking about drinking water, did you say it was 2 to 3 ounces every half hour?
2 to 3 ounces, 3 to 4 times every half hour.
Oh, 3 to 4 times every half hour.
Yes.
Okay, because I was wondering because.
Or a mouth, just a nice good swig.
Okay, and if you, because I have to drink 167 ounces of water, and I've been doing it lately, but that's pretty hard to do. And what I try to do is just whenever I think about it, take a sip.
Yeah, you want this physicist said you want to at least say that 4 times every half hour, except before meals and during and after. The larger a person is, the more difficult. But the math changes when a person gets real big. I had a guy that was 572 pounds. Mm-hmm. And so you change. There's a formula to that, and we aren't going to get into that. But you don't have to drink as much with that real big person. But the people in here, everybody in here, just take your body weight divided by 2.
But if you is it better to, if you have to drink it a little more often to get it done, is better than not to? Okay.
And then not drink enough, yes, sir. See, for me, the stage of Tennessee tells me I'm to drink a gallon of water a day. Anybody know why the state of Tennessee has told me I'm to drink a gallon of water a day? The Fire Academy. Yes, the Fire Academy has told us that firefighters need at least a gallon of water a day proactively in case of a house fire. Yes?
How do you move from prescription blood pressure medication to Hawthorne?
Okay. So what a lot of folks will do is they will prayerfully, again, I'm serious, prayerfully, and then start the Hawthorne berry, do the blood pressure medicine, and just like you do with diabetes that we're going to talk about next, is you check the blood pressure. And you're going to see that blood pressure come down with the Hawthorne berry. You're going to see the blood pressure come down with the Duke diet. Actually, Kempner developed the diet, the rice diet, for malignant hypertension. Malignant hypertension. He then found that it not only worked for malignant hypertension, but it also worked for all areas of cardiovascular disease, worked for diabetes, worked for renal failure, and worked for weight loss. I met a lady there who lost 200 pounds. Now, that 200 pounds didn't happen in 3 months, 6 months, a year. She stayed on that program for the longest. The longest I ever saw a person stay on the Duke diet was my father. Dad called me, and he said, again, I told you my dad had cardiac issues. And he called me, he was in his mid-70s, and the physician said, he went to the doctor in Nashville, and he said, Mr. Cross, you'll be lucky to have another 3 months. Your heart is so weak and failing. So Dad called me to inform me. I said, Dad, I'll be there. So I drove to Nashville, shared with him the Duke program. He started it. Dad lived 6 years, right at 1 month shy of 6 years. He got COVID and died in the hospital, and I have no idea what happened to him because I wasn't even allowed on the parking lot. So I don't know what happened. But I asked him through that time, because his heart was so failing. It was so bad. He was at 20% when the doc told him that. We got him up to 30, at least was at 30, but he was able to hang in there with the skin of his teeth all those years. Now, he wasn't able to do a whole lot, but he was able to hang in there. And my brother, who works at Vanderbilt in anesthesia department, he said, Walt, the only reason you got Dad staying alive is that diet you got him on for Duke University. And I'd say, Dad, is that not boring? He says, yeah. But he said, I'd rather see my kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids and make my tongue happy. And so, was it sustainable? Sustainable for right at 6 years doing that. So it is a sustainable program. And so what you do, to answer your question, is you do the Duke program, you do the Hawthorne berry, and monitor the blood pressure, say 3 times a day if a person's really, at least once. And if you see that blood pressure coming down, when you start coming down, if you're a healthcare person, you know what to do. You cut back on the hypertensive medication. If you're not, you just call your doc and say, Doc, I'm doing Duke's program for high blood pressure, and my blood pressure's gone down. It's down to 102 over 65, or 64, you go on even numbers. I mean, it's 102 over 64, What do you want me to do? Well, yeah, you better cut back on that medicine. And you just cut back on it. It's kind of like when you're driving a car up a hill, you step on the gas. And when you come over the top of it, you let off of it. And so what happens is, whether it's diabetes, you're coming off the diabetic medicine, or whether it's hypertension coming off the hypertension medicine, whether you know what to do yourself, like sliding scale. It's just like sliding scale. And you just cut back on it if you know what you're doing, or you talk with your healthcare provider and you say, my blood pressure's coming down, I'm doing Duke's program, how would you like me to adjust the medication? Your physician's going to adjust the medication. Yes?
Brought my cholesterol from 259 down to 174 on just flaxseed alone and lecithin.
Mm-hmm.
Back then I took 6 capsules of flaxseed a day with the same with lecithin. Now I'm doing 4 tablespoons of fresh flaxseed grounded with water, and I drink it down in one hit. Is that okay, or should I just put it and sprinkle it on my food throughout the day? But once it's been grinded, it's not good after half an hour or an hour?
15 minutes.
15 minutes, okay.
Yes.
So is
that's
that
perfectly fine. And it's true, the lecithin granules and the flax help to reduce atherosclerosis, but it also lowers cholesterol. Both of them also will lose. It will also, both of the lecithin and the flax will also lower cholesterol too. So that's great. It works. There's another testimony. It works. Yes. Oh, yes.
I'm sorry to keep asking questions, but I have lots of friends. My ex-husband, about 6 weeks ago, had a heart attack, and they put a stent in, and I've been talking to him about the hawthorn berry and cayenne and those things, and he's afraid. Also, I talked to him because they also put him on statin drugs, Plavix, and put the stent in. But he's afraid to take like the hawthorn berry because everything online says it can interfere with what he's taking. What would you have to say about that? What can I encourage him to get? He's, I think, around 325 pounds, and has always been a meat eater and dairy and everything, and he's gone vegan since then. Yeah.
Good.
So that's a big step, but I will also tell him about the flax and the lecithin. Is there anything else you can recommend?
He's stopping the sandpaper.
Yeah.
That's what you have to stop with. You know, I had a lady come in with, this lady was orange. Her eyes were orange, her skin was orange, and her physician said, you know, you have liver failure, and he said, there's nothing else we can do. You're dying. Prepare to die. And she came in, and the first thing I asked her is, you drank? And she was a wino. And she said, yes, I have stopped drinking. I said, you're 50% there. We did natural, and she lived. She's still alive today, and that was 2004.
Will he have to stay on like a Plavix type medication for his life because
well,
of
it's
the
because of
stent
the
that was
stent,
placed?
and they don't want, you know, anything because of the stent. They don't want any plaque buildup because of the stent. It is true things like nattokinase, which comes from the natto plant. Japanese pronounce it nattokinase, but nattokinase is amazing in doing the same thing. But you just... Is he a Christian?
Yes.
Good. Have him talk to the medical director.
Okay. What dose of the nattokinase would you recommend?
2 a day.
2, okay.
2 a day, yes. And it works just like a regular anticoagulant. Not blood thinner, but it's not a blood thinner, it's an anticoagulant. And so it will work that way. The other is he needs his weight to come down. And with that diet, if he can do the Duke diet, it would even be better. If he can do Kempner's diet, he will lose the weight faster. It's excellent for cardiovascular disease.
He's lost like, in the 6 weeks, he's lost like 40 or 60
That's great.
pounds. I don't know how
So we know whatever he's doing, have him keep doing it.
Okay.
And that weight is significantly going to help his heart because that weight is a huge burden on his heart.
They said, I forget what artery it was 100% occluded.
And so that's the one they put the stent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Hawthorn berry is good for depression and anxiety as well. And for that, do you have to take it like for blood pressure 4 times a day, or?
I've never used it for that, so I don't have a knowledge base on that.
Okay.
I'd have to do some research on that.
Do you know if it because like one of the problems with natural options for depression and anxiety is if you're taking SSRI, you can't, for example, take St. John's wort until you come off the other. Is that an issue with hawthorn berry at all? Or
it's not. If it works for that, it's not. It doesn't. See, the problem with St. John's wort is it does the same thing as the medication, and it's just like taking too much medication. It's not. It's clashing. It's just too much of doing the same thing. It's like I had a guy call me one day. His EF was, what was this guy's EF? I had 2 people at the same time. One was 18 and one was, his was down around 15 or 16. He was really low. And I don't see how the guy even went. And he was going to the VA in Johnson City, and the doctor kept telling him to take this medication, and he says, no, I'm just going to do the hawthorn berry. I'm doing better on hawthorn berry. One day he goes to see her up in Johnson City, and when he got home, she again tried to push him to do the medication, and he refused. She still gave him another prescription. And when he got home, there was a message on his answer machine. Mr. So-and-so, call me immediately when you get home. It was that doctor. And he called her and he says, Doc, what's wrong? She says, did you fill that prescription? No, I told you I'm going to. Good. Huh? She says, I was so impressed by your consistency that I did some research. And she said, I found studies in Canada saying that hawthorn berry is doing the exact same thing, that the medication I want you to take, don't take both of them. Yeah. And so what I find for depression, and that's a whole nother subject we could speak on, but if you're anxiety, the best thing I found on anxiety, B-complex, lithium orotate, magnesium, but the best thing I have found to really this is a home run hitter, is lavender essential oil, 1 drop. Vetiver, rub the wrist together and breathe it. Vetiver essential oil, 1 drop. Rub it, V-E-T-I-V-E-R, V-E-T-I-V-E-R, vetiver. Rub it together and breathe it. Anxiety goes down extremely fast. It's not uncommon to see anxiety go down within 2 minutes. No question, exercise is good, because exercise, go take a power walk and that lowers cortisol, and that's going to help. For depression, I like, there's a number of things on depression, and y'all are getting ready to have a class on depression. But I like, Dr. Strachan taught me to use skullcap, 1 quart of water, 1 cup of a herb. That's a lot. 1 cup of the herb. He said, make it as thick as mud if they'll drink it. But that works. Magnesium is known as the depression drug. They did a study on women with depression. They found that women who drank a gallon of water a day, I'm speaking off. Women who went to bed by 9 o'clock significantly lowered depression. There's a hospital outside of, up somewhere in New England. They won't even take you as a depression. They deal with depression a lot. And they won't even take you as a patient unless you're willing to drink a gallon of water a day. I don't care which weight it is. And even more if the person's larger, that needs more than a gallon of water. So there's several things you can use, but there's a lot of things that we can look at on depression. Yes? Help me out on what I'm supposed to be doing here. Do I need to keep going now? Do we need to take a break? Come back and talk on diabetes?
Let's take a break.
Okay, let's take a break.
Hello, friend. My name is James Ash, and I want to personally thank you for watching our program today. If you would like to see more videos just like this, all you have to do is go to statelineadventmedia.org, and you can watch to your heart's content. And oh, by the way, don't forget to click the like, share, and subscribe buttons on each one of our various platforms. Because you see, my friend, this helps us reach more people with the good news of Jesus' soon return. Ministries like this require large teams of people. You would be amazed if you were to see how many people are required to produce each one of our programs. And if you would like to join with us by becoming a ministry partner, you can actually help us reach the unreached with the gospel. All you have to do is go to statelineadventmedia.org/donate, and you can give us a much-needed boost. Most importantly of all, friend, we need your prayers. I assure you that the devil does not like this ministry, and your prayers are what protect and direct what we do here. Once again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts.